Hotep, everybody. This is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network and host of the African History Network show. It is Monday, October 23rd, 2023, and we are here for a very special edition of the African History Network show. And I'm here with a fantastic guest who I met a couple weeks ago on Roland Martin Unfiltered, Omari Hosang, and she is the founder and executive director of All Streets, All People, also known as ASAP. And she's the senior state organizing manager for Black Voters Matter Fund. Black Voters Matter Fund. How you doing today, Omari?
I'm good, Michael. How are you today? Good
evening. Hey, I'm all right. It's good to have you on. And I know when you were on Roland Martin Unfiltered, we were talking about the Louisiana governor's race, and it was right before the election. Well, the election took place on Saturday, October 14th, for those who don't know. And Louisiana's Attorney General, Jeff Landry, who is a Republican and who's backed by Benedict Donald Trump, has won the Louisiana governor's race, holding off a crowded field of candidates. The election took place Saturday, October 14th, 2023. Now, State Attorney General Jeff Landry won the race by receiving more than 52% of the vote of the electorate, a threshold that eliminated the need for a runoff election and flipped a seat that was held by Democratic Governor Bel Edwards since 2016. Governor Edwards is term limited. Now, State Attorney General Jeff Landry defeated many challengers in this race, including Dr. Shawn Wilson, who was on Roland Martin Unfiltered as well. Dr. Shawn Wilson is African-American, and he's the former Secretary of Transportation for the state of Louisiana also. Dr. Shawn Wilson got 72% of the African-American vote. But another result of the Saturday, October 14th election was the scapegoating of African-American voters after exit polling data showed their low turnout for a political contest in which the leading Republican has been accused of championing anti-Black policies, and he's been accused of being a white supremacist. Now, I saw an article, Omari, that you posted on your Facebook page, and we're Facebook friends. And this is an article from news1.com, and I'm going to go to the post that I did on my Facebook page, October 21st. And the name of this article is Black Voters Scapegoated for Louisiana electing suspected white supremacist Jeff Landry as governor. Okay, this is a good article by Bruce C.T. Wright, and you posted on the post that I made, and I'm going to zoom in on this here, and I want you to comment on it. You said that yes, the scapegoating has got to stop. Yes, the scapegoating has got to stop. Personal and collective responsibility is one thing. Being blamed for results of this election is another. How have Black people collectively benefited from elections, policy, and the decisions that elected people are making / have made? So give us a synopsis of what's going on here, and what were you trying to express in your sentiments here?
Well, first of all, I just have to commend your consolidation, your recap of like all of the things that have been Louisiana these last few months. Because I just have to stop. It's hard to be eloquent in this moment, but I do appreciate that recap. But
thank you.
The scapegoating, I think it does. It does have to stop, for several reasons.
Okay.
First, let's explore number one, the voting apparatus.
Right.
The fact that, the state of Louisiana, we have 2 cases in court around the violation of the Voting Rights Act.
Right.
We have 2 maps that we've had to vote on in the last year and a half that were illegal.
Right.
Right. And so there are clear, proven attempts by our government to dilute our Black vote.
Mm-hmm.
So number one, you're right. Like the perfect ideal definition of voter suppression is happening here, and it's being defined in the courts. But then you also have the reality that people have voted for years.
Mm-hmm.
May it have been a chronic voter or someone who may have just voted once or twice. And they're asking the questions as we're organizing with them, how has my vote changed my life? How have elections changed my life? And so, that begs the question of, you got an apparatus that's blocking them from voting, both very overtly and then also subliminally in many ways through the messaging.
Right.
And then you have the reality of day-to-day life where they're not seeing their interests reflected politically. Right. And
so just a quick question, and I want you to continue. When they say they have voted and how has voting changed their lives or what have you, one, what is the age range of people who usually ask that question? Number one. Number two, what is your response when questions?
Well, I mean, honestly, it's been all over the place in terms of the age. It's been Gen Zs, but, there's kind of like a different perspective in terms of each age demographic. It's been our elders.
Okay.
Who have been disenchanted with the process. It's been our middle agers at 35 to 55, even though, 35 is not middle age, but, that's another conversation. But it's been that group as well. So it's really been all across the board. It's Black people who are struggling from day to day, right?
Okay.
Trying to pay bills, trying to put food on the table, trying to make sure and ensure that their children are being adequately educated, trying to make sure they're living in places that are safe, going to places that are safe. Trying to ensure that the food is healthy, that their health, that they have access to health care. I mean, there are day-to-day issues where elections and voting have not necessarily precipitated as the common consensus around a way to get these things addressed, a way to actually transform our community.
Now, has anybody explained to them everything that they mentioned is impacted by laws and policies?
So as we have our conversations, that does come up. And I think, it's one thing to be disenchanted, but it's another thing to be able to be comfortable to talk about why. So it does create an entry point for us to have conversations about the way these things connect with policy, the way these things connect with the people who we're putting in office. And it also gives us the opportunity to frame it based on the issue that they actually care about, right? Because again, they're talking, right? So if it's utility bills, who's on the utility board? Who's on that public service commission? Who owns the utilities in your city? If it is gun violence, what are the policies and laws municipally on the local level around criminal justice? How is your civil service board functioning? So it creates entry point not only to say these connect to who you're voting for, so let's go vote, but also an entry point to say that we as people collectively have power when we vote, but also when we show up and pay attention to how these various things that are ailing us, whether it be paying bills, whether it be gun violence, whether it be something else, making the connections to the levers that make these things happen. And the bottom line is, when it comes to politics, when it comes to governance, when it comes to societal issues, there are individuals that are making these decisions, and many of these individuals we are voting for are not voting for.
Absolutely. Well, as I explained to people, and I'm not just a political commentator, I'm also a historian, politics impacts every aspect of our lives, from the water we drink to the air we breathe to the food we eat. And politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances. Absolutely. Politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. And I saw this firsthand when I was on the committee to write an executive order for the city of Detroit. So I've seen politics up close and personal firsthand. Okay, so what I want to do here is I want to go through and let's look at this piece here from newsone.com. And I first saw this article on your Facebook page, And then I took a screenshot of it and shared it on my Facebook page as well. And I contacted you. I said, because we were already talking about having you on my show here after we were on Roland Martin Unfiltered together. So I want everybody to read this article written by Bruce C.T. Wright from news1.com. This is one of the reasons why African-American owned media and responsible African-American owned media matters. It's from October 5th, 2023. Black voters scapegoated for Louisiana electing suspected white supremacist Jeff Landry as governor. Now, Jeff Landry is the current state's attorney general for Louisiana. And very briefly here, I want to go to this point here. Okay, another byproduct of Saturday's election was the scapegoating of the exit polling showed low turnout for a political contest in which the leading Republican was being accused of being a white supremacist who particularly champions anti-Black policies. John Covilon, a Louisiana-based pollster and CEO of JM Enterprises, a data analytics and consulting firm, pointed to low Black turnout as a primary reason why Jeff Landry was elected. The Republican Jeff Landry was elected. On Saturday, October 14th, election day, an estimated 17% of voters who went to the polls were African American. Okay, Covilon posted on the social media app formerly known as Twitter. Okay, now the numbers were not much better among early voters, with 26% of people casting ballots ahead of election day African American. So African Americans made up 17% of those voting on election day, and 26% of early voters. Now, African Americans are 24% of let me see. In total, 72% of Louisiana's white voters participated in the Saturday, October 14th election, compared to 24% of Black voters. All right. Now, the voting along racial lines corresponded with their respective preferred candidates. As I stated, African American voters overwhelmingly supported Dr. Shawn Wilson, Louisiana's former Secretary of Transportation and Development. He was on Roland Martin Unfiltered. He's a brilliant brother. Dr. Shawn Wilson got 70% of Black voters, while just 12% of Black voters voted for Jeff Landry. Okay, so what do you make of this, Omari? And then I'm going to continue with this piece here.
Well, number one, the numbers are so sad. They're sad. That's the reality. They're facts. That's who showed up. And yes, it was clearly a low Black voter turnout. We accept that. I think a part of our analysis moving forward, because as you know, in Louisiana, as disappointing as that has been, we have had to continue to prepare for our runoff election. We have to go back to vote November 18th, which leaves us about 5 weeks to get back to the drawing board, figure out what we did wrong, right? Mm-hmm. And then figure out what we're going to do next.
Now, explain the runoff election. Give us the date again for the runoff election. Explain that.
So the runoff election, where there are very key statewide races on that ballot, is November 18th. Early voting starts November 3rd and lasts for a week. So we have Attorney General, so the person that will replace Jeff Landry. We have our state treasurer. And then we also have our Secretary of State. And there's a Black woman who has run before.
Not governor. Not governor, but the other political positions are up for re-election on Tuesday, November 18th.
Saturday, November 18th.
Saturday. It's okay. Saturday, November 18th. Okay.
Yeah, see, Louisiana has Saturday elections, which is a good thing. We like that, but there are too many elections. So that's a whole nother conversation.
You said there are too many elections?
There are too many elections in Louisiana. Okay. Louisiana has one of the states with the highest number of elections. We are constantly voting. If you ask anybody in the advocacy community, the voting rights community, that is something that we have to have a legislative remedy around, and we have to factor that into our voter apathy conversation, because if we're voting all the time. It's almost like, oh, we're voting again, we voting again, we voting again, we voting
Right.
again, and can't even really determine how these elections are even impacting our lives. So that has to be fixed as well.
Okay. So when people ask the question, how has voting impacted my life? What was your response to them to show the connection between voting and policies enacted and the conditions of people asking the question?
Oh, first of all, I tell them it's everything. Voting policy, it impacts every aspect of your life, number one. But I think the best strategy for really connecting right beyond that statement is connecting to like actual things that are happening. So again,
Right.
somebody who is in the midst of utility crisis and they're talking about they don't want to vote. Well, in your city, the city council and the mayor are your utility board. And
Right.
so if you're in an instance where your lights are being cut off because you owe $3,000 on your bill and they don't allow payment plans, guess who you need to take that to? Your city council person, your mayor.
Right.
And those
Right.
people show up on your ballot. And so those are just, that's just one example. There are a lot of people in our community who have been impacted by police brutality or who have been justice involved, right? They've been in
Right.
jail. They've been impacted by the criminal justice system. We elect who? Judges. We elect who? District attorneys. These are people who make decisions around who goes to jail for how long someone sits in jail before they're bailed out. Our sheriffs, they run our county and parish jails. So, the list is endless. And I think the more molecular and the closer to home that we get to the person that we're talking to, the more we can really tap into the reality that when you don't vote, you continue to allow other people to make decisions for you. And then further than that, you have to do more than just voting, right? And
Right.
that conversation cannot happen just during the election cycle. That conversation has to happen
Exactly.
every single day.
It's a continuous process. And what's also important is what you do after the election is over with, and the engagement after the election is over with, pushing policies, holding elected officials accountable. So one of the mistakes, and I argue that as a people, African Americans have never really been taught to play the game of politics to win. Okay. Okay. You have organizations like yours that are trying to educate African Americans, but as a people, we have not been, we're playing a real life game of political football, and most of us don't know the difference between the first down and the touchdown, and wonder why we're not winning the game or have more points on.
Well, the thing is,
all right,
but that's our responsibility to educate them, like the people.
Oh, I agree. I agree.
And like
your organization and others,
right.
not putting all the onus on Black Voters Matter. Okay. But it's our, and I'm going to get to that. The Democratic Party has a role to play, but we can't look at the Democratic Party or any political party that we don't control as a savior. We can use them as a tool, but we can't look at them as a savior. We have to understand the difference. Yes. Okay. All right, so let me. I'm going to go back to this article here in just a minute, but I want to, I deal with this type of information. I've been dealing with this for years. A lot of my viewers and followers know that my degree's in business administration with a major in marketing from Wayne State University here in Detroit. Okay. I used to teach entrepreneurship for 7 years, and not just a historian, not just political commentator, but I have a background in business as well. So one of the things I talk about to people when they talk about voting and the impact of voting, what's the minimum wage in the state of Louisiana around?
The last number I've heard is $7.25.
$7.25 an hour. Okay. Now, are you familiar with Black Women's Equal Pay Day?
Loosely, I've heard of it.
Okay. So it takes the average African American woman 20 months to make the same amount of money that the average white male made the previous 12 months.
That's ridiculous.
Okay. Now, this article is from blackenterprise.com, October 17, 2019. Black women lose out over $1 million in their careers thanks to the wage gap. Okay. This is an excellent article by Justin Barton. So anybody that thinks politics or policies is not related to economics and your economic condition, one, you don't watch the African History Network show. Two, you don't read, okay, because it directly is. Now, briefly, a black woman will lose out on $946,120 over a 40-year career if she continues to make 61 cents on the dollar that every white man earns due to the wage gap analysis by the National Women's Law Center shows. So Black Women's Equal Pay Day usually sometime in August, and African-American women make somewhere between in the past few years, somewhere between 63 cents to 67 cents on the dollar that the average white male makes. Okay. Now, assuming she and her white non-Hispanic male counterpart begin work at age 20, a black woman will have to work until she is 86 years old to catch up to what a white non-Hispanic man has been paid by age 60, the press release state. Okay. So then it goes on to talk about states that are the worst when it comes to how much black women make. The National Women's Law Center found that black women face larger pay disparity in certain states. In the state of Louisiana, black women are paid on average 47 cents of every dollar that white non-Hispanic male counterpart makes, which is the worst state for black women's wage equality. Now, the numbers, it may have ticked up to 50 cents by now. Okay, I'm just this is from 2020. This is from 3 years ago. Okay, so it may be 50 cents. Okay, it may be 51 cents. All right, but this shows the impact of policy. Okay, so this is something you can share with people down there. So, and Republicans control your state legislature. Republicans control your now the governorship.
Yes.
And they have the ability to raise the minimum wage, but Republicans generally don't do that because they're pro-corporation. Okay.
Correct.
So we have to,
I want to add too, in Louisiana, pay raises and anything having to do with labor, making labor changes is preempted. So the state
give us an example.
So if the state won't do it, say the city of Shreveport up in North Louisiana wants to increase their minimum wage. The council can vote on it. The state of Louisiana has essentially blocked through preemption the ability of municipalities to do that. And so, there has been a fight through Unleash Local to make sure that we have the ability, people have the ability where we don't have state power, where Black folks and folks who are low income don't have state power, can have the ability to, at least in a place like Shreveport, a place like New Orleans, a place like Baton Rouge, be able to set their own minimum wage, be able to make sure that women can have that maternity leave that they need, paid maternity leave that they need. So all of these things, being able to recognize how our state governments are shifting power away from our local cities, but also understanding how can we leverage the power that we do have in our local cities to work for us in an environment like in Louisiana where we have a Republican supermajority.
Right now, and with a supermajority, usually that means they control 2/3 or more of the state legislature. Okay, so with most state constitutions, the state legislature can override a governor's veto. So if the state legislature passes a bill, the state house and senate passes a bill, send it to the governor to sign it, and the governor vetoes the bill, then with most state constitutions, the state legislature can override the governor's veto if they get a 2/3 majority vote in both houses. Is that how it works in the state of Louisiana?
Yes. And can I just pause to just
go ahead?
You need to come on to Ella Jo Baker Movement School, because I didn't know I was coming on for my own personal political education.
Okay.
But look, like that civics education, walking, us through that process is so important, right?
Absolutely.
Because like you can, if you know the ingredients that it takes to actually make the changes, you're a little bit closer. You're more accessible to being able to influence that process. So I just have to pause for the cause to just lift that up.
Oh,
around
absolutely. I'll come
education.
on.
But yeah,
Yep.
even with, we got these last couple of months with
Hmm.
our Democratic governor, John Bel Edwards here in
Right.
Louisiana. And so if there was a policy, say he wanted um, to just do anything, right? He wanted to stop the legislature from doing something per se. He, with our supermajority, does he really have the power to do so?
Right.
Right.
And
So
this. Mhm.
go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Finish your
No, so
thought.
it just speaks to, you can have who you want in the governor's office, but if your
Right.
state legislature is in a chokehold by whichever party, it is almost impossible to get things done or to get policy passed in that type of environment.
And this is why I explain to people, it's not just the president, it's not just the governor, but it's also your state house. It's also your state senate. That's extremely important because they're the ones that legislate. That's the state legislature. Okay. They're the ones that write the bills. The governor signs the bills into law. So and what a lot of states have done is have gerrymandered districts, okay, to reduce the voting power of African Americans. So they would either split us up to disperse us, so we don't have majority, black districts, or pack us all into one district to reduce our ability to impact races and get more African Americans into the state legislature.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to go back to this article here from news1.com.
Okay.
And once again, everybody, the name of this piece is Black Voters Scapegoated for Louisiana Electing Suspected White Supremacist Jeff Landry as governor. So when we continue with this piece, it says, okay, so we know black voters overwhelmingly voted for Dr. Shawn Wilson. Back in 2016, the pollster, Louisiana-based pollster John Kuvilan, out that John Bel Edwards, who is term limited and he's a white male, won convincingly with 91% of the black vote. Okay, now Dr. Shawn Wilson got 70% of the black vote.
Yes.
Considering the exit polling data and historical perspective, quote, Shawn got weak turnout, did not dominate among black voters, Kuvilan concluded. So what, give us your analysis of this, because you're there on the ground in Louisiana, and a lot of people were, as this article goes on to say, for the month of September, they said Democrats were outspent $1.2 million by Republicans versus $28,000 by Democrats in the month of September 2023. Give us your analysis there on the ground in Louisiana.
Right. So, number one, it was very shocking to see the amount of people who did not realize that a black man was running for governor. So there was that. It was it was a real thing. Very much a real thing that people had no idea. And then I don't think there was a general consensus across the black community of those who did know that he could win. Right. There's this idea that has Louisiana in a chokehold that a black person cannot win a statewide office.
Now, right? Where does that ideology come from? Or where do you think it comes from?
I would assume anti-blackness and racism in the state of Louisiana. Of course, I think it's connected to like the disconnectedness in the black voter pool around agreeing on a common candidate. I think there are a lot of implications as to why we can't elect, a black person statewide. And I think we need to continue to have that conversation and really dig into why. We do have a large number of black voters in our state. That's not to say that the black electorate can save an election, but we can most certainly have a huge impact on a statewide election. I think there's, of course, the other piece around the $1.2 million to the $28,000, and the role that the Democratic Party may or may not have played in this election. Their clear lack of investment, as evidenced by those numbers in the election, I think is very troubling and concerning as to what happened, and to really have that conversation. But we cannot just, that's why I am not for the scapegoating of Black voters, and I'm not for the scapegoating of anybody. I think at the end of the day, we have to figure out what is our strategy, because people are continuing to become increasingly more jaded and unbelieving that Louisiana is a positive political factor. And to me, we have too many Black people in this state.
Right. 1.5 million approximately.
Yeah. We're the blackest state in terms of concentration. And so we have considerable political power that is untapped. But for folks to say, hey, I'm keeping my hands off of Louisiana is pure red, is becoming redder and redder. To them, I say, how is it that we can really tap into this 920,000 plus Black voters if we don't invest in what it takes to do that? Black Voters Matter is a vehicle of investment into Black voters. ASAP is a vehicle of investment into Black voters. People's Promise, all of the countless grassroots organizations in the state and national organizations around the country that can invest and leverage their resources into this state show me that we can leverage the political power that we have in this state. But it takes investment, and it takes a belief in that. And we don't create belief or inspiration or activation by blaming folks on this last election. Let's really figure out our strategy when it comes to, from the partisan side of it, but also from the nonpartisan side of what is the factor that kept our people from going to vote? What is that factor? And how can we break through that? I don't think saying go out to vote is the answer to that question. I think getting real about what our people need and the resources that it takes to provide that for our people, to meet us in our moment of need. I think that's a multifaceted answer, and it is a diversity of institutions and organizations. But we're going to have to come together and get on one page, because this political game is deadly everywhere, particularly in Louisiana, where we have the petrochemical industry. Where we were just deemed by some wallet hub the most dangerous state in America, right? Now Jeff Landry, speaking of the power that senators and legislators have in our state, Representative Alan Seabaugh has created a new task force around crime, right? And they have this kind of tough on crime approach. Jeff Landry has been on record for believing that stop and frisk is a critical strategy in stopping crime. And so these are real concerns, real life or death concerns, where we've just elected someone who has a clear stance that opposes our self-interest and our interests collectively. So we got to figure it out how we're going to come together and make this thing work.
Exactly. I definitely agree with that. Now, I want to go back to this article here, and when I explain to African Americans the importance of voting and voting strategically, now I'm neither Democrat nor Republican, but I sure as hell ain't stupid. I can see whose policies, I can see who consistently votes against our best interests, votes against policies that are beneficial to African Americans, and I see who consistently, generally speaking, votes for policies that are beneficial for us. But one of the things I tell people is, I know people mean well, but we have to stop telling our people to exercise your right to vote. Okay, you don't vote for exercise. If you want to exercise, you go to the gym and work out. You vote for power, pure and simple. You vote for Black power. You vote for policies that are beneficial to you, your families, your communities, and the policies that are beneficial to African Americans are beneficial to America in general. And you vote for people who will craft those policies and put them in place, but also people who will vote to protect your gains as well. because one of the mistakes that we make is we don't understand the concept of protecting gains that have already been made, and don't understand how to assess gains that have been made as well. Okay, so there are always people trying to turn back the clock. You look at the U.S. Supreme Court. They struck down affirmative action when it comes to college admissions. Okay, after affirmative action was put in place by President Lyndon Johnson in September 1965. All right, but this was a result of the 2016 presidential election, and Donald Trump winning by 78,000 votes in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, and too many of our people not understanding how the electoral college works. And I hear people say, oh, the popular vote doesn't matter. No, the popular vote does matter. It's the popular vote per state that matters. Okay, because when you become president-elect by getting 270 electoral college votes, you get to 270 by winning the popular vote in the state. When you win the popular vote in the state, then you win the electoral college votes associated with the state. So Republicans won 2 presidential elections in about 20 years by winning in the electoral college, but losing the popular vote, because a lot of our people haven't read the U.S. Constitution, because the U.S. Constitution created the electoral college. So when you understand the rules of the game, then you understand how to win the game. Yeah. Okay. This is what I'm saying. We've never been taught this as a people. Okay. If you go to, I tell all my listeners, go to loc.gov, Library of Congress, loc.gov, or archives.gov, U.S. National Archives, and read the U.S. Constitution. It's there. You can read it for free. Okay. Okay. And so when we look at this is why I tell people talking about voting third party for president. I'm like, no third party candidate has won a single electoral college vote since 1968. You need 270 electoral college votes to become president-elect. So when you talk about voting third party, you're talking about throwing away a vote. Okay, see, you're trying to score 16 points on a field goal. That don't exist. Yeah. Okay. Because you don't understand the rules of the game. Okay. So we're about to take ourselves out. This is a mistake. Look, Donald Trump won Michigan in 2016 by 10,704 votes. He won by 10,704 votes, 0.2 of a percentage point. Okay. Jill Stein got 50,000 votes out of Michigan. Why? We don't understand math. We invented math, but don't understand math. Okay. Let me go back to this. Let me go back to this piece here. Okay. And they talked about so Roland Martin made a comment as well. Our friend Roland. We're both on. I'm on the show every Friday. It's been October this month is my 3rd year anniversary of being on Roland Martin Unfiltered for the past 3 years. I'm on there. Oh, thanks. I'm on every Friday as a panelist providing historical and political context and commentary. So journalist Roland Martin also suggested Black voters didn't do their part in Saturday's election by asking, quote, how in the hell did Black voters in Louisiana not turn out in major numbers to keep this sadistic man out of the governor's mansion? Okay, end quote. Now, just so people understand, Roland had Omari on the show. Roland had Jeff Chambers on the show as well. Who ran for the U.S. Senate in Louisiana. Gary Chambers. He had him on. I was on with Gary Chambers as well. Roland had Dr. Shawn Wilson on. So Roland has been in support of African Americans getting out and voting, and especially voting for Dr. Shawn Wilson. So it's not like he's speaking after the fact and hasn't been educating people on what's been going on in Louisiana. Roland Martin's question was in response to a social media post drawing attention to Jeff Landry's documented history of anti-Blackness. Okay, here's the tweet from Roland Martin as well. Okay, so comment on this and what are comment on Roland's post or comment, and then what are African Americans saying now that is like, okay, now Jeff Landry wins and he has a history of anti-Blackness and anti-Black policies?
So this is a layered question. Let me deal first with Roland.
That's fine.
So it's a legitimate question. It's a legitimate question. Why didn't we turn out? And my question would be, how many people actually knew Jeff Landry's record? Was that widespread? I saw several Jeff Landry commercials, but I didn't really see, and that's not saying they did not exist, but
Sure.
I didn't see any commercials that really spoke on Jeff Landry's record that made it widely known. I did not see a lot of signage. There are many people that I have talked to that said they never heard from one candidate or the other, or even received those common calls we get during an election like this, a call or a text to get out to vote. Right. And so I think there needs to be a serious question about capacity. And that's why I speak about solidarity a lot in terms of Black folks everywhere need to be helping Black folks everywhere as much as we can. As many people that flooded into Georgia for their various elections need to be the amount of people that flooded into Louisiana, knowing that this was our last blue frontier in terms of having a Democratic governor in the Deep South. That's gone. That's over with. But if we had that blitz of people and organizations, which means we have to ask for it. So I'm not blaming anyone for not coming. But what I'm saying is that should have been incorporated, hindsight is 2020, into the strategy. We needed people to be knocking on doors, to make phone calls, to send texts, to pass out leaflets, to put out signs, to wave signs, to provide rides, provide vans, provide money. I mean, there are so many things that, and it's not too late, because again,
November 18th.
These three races, for the runoff, Attorney General, Secretary of State, and State Treasurer, if we put decent ones in office, they can serve as much as possible as a buffer between our governor, chief prosecutor, attorney general, the chief money bag purse holder, our state treasurer, and the chief elections administrator in a state where voter suppression is clearly documented, from the courts on down to the legislative policies. So we have an opportunity. And so I'm calling on people who have those resources that know that the Black electorate in Louisiana, just by number, shows our immense potential and our immense power, not only on the state level, but as you talked about, the Electoral College. When you win the popular vote, you win the electoral votes. And we know that has been the Republican strategy, especially in states like Louisiana. And so there are still some blue parishes, but there's a blue block here, but there's an even bigger Black block that holds power, that we can continue to hold out hope and build on the state level. But that Black power that we have, we really need to start building campaigns and leveraging it on the local level, because the revolution is local, and we can't forget that. But then also too, next year is 2024. And so there's work to be done around that, not forgetting about November 18th here in Louisiana. But then I know that in every community in Louisiana, there is something going on that is hurting our people. And there are enough organizations in those spaces to organize around these issues and to provide support in our community, and to have those conversations that you mentioned, where we're connecting our people's issue to the ballot and to the policy, in real time. And that has to be a part of the strategy as well, to empower these local organizations to be able to organize locally around the actual issues, the issues that would actually, that we can address, but that would actually drive people to the ballot if they're starting to see, if they finally see how these issues impact their life, and how voting is a step in order to reach that solution.
Absolutely. When Gary Chambers was on Roland Martin Unfiltered, and I actually posted that clip, I actually broadcasted that here on our fan page. And so those of you who follow the African History Network, you can watch that clip of Gary Chambers and myself and Roland discussing this on Roland Martin Unfiltered on our fan page, the African History Network, and my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep. I asked Gary about how do they connect the history of Louisiana and the history of voter suppression in Louisiana and the Louisiana State Constitution of 1898, which imposed poll taxes, literacy tests, but also a grandfather clause as well. And it also imposed a 9-3 majority rule when it came to felony convictions. So if you had a jury of 12 and 9 people
non-unanimous juries.
Yeah, 9 unanimous juries. If 9 people found you guilty and 3 found you not guilty, then you were guilty. And this is what felonies. That was done specifically to nullify the African American jurors on a jury, because based upon that 1898 state constitution, African Americans could serve on juries. Okay, so they put that rule in place. Now it was they changed it to 10-2 after some decades, and they changed it to unanimous in 2018. Okay, how do you all make the connection from that Louisiana state constitution that, and parts of it are still in effect today? How do you make that connection from that to policies and conditions that exist today that negatively impact African Americans in Louisiana?
Right, it can't be disconnected. You know, I think about the ballot initiative that we just recently have been dealing with around the slavery exception clause, which is still alive and well in our Louisiana state constitution. And, you know, I don't think that it is broadly known that state policies and changing constitutional amendments can be brought to the people via a vote, but also that constitutional amendments can be changed via legislature. So there has been a fight for the past 3 years. And once again, State Senator Representative Alan Seabaugh was someone who very much did not want to remove the slavery exception clause from the state constitution because of how it could possibly impact prison labor. Okay, so we're going from the voting booth. This is, you know, we're going from the state constitution, right? A slavery exception clause in the state constitution that can be amended through the vote of both the House and the Senate, and then taken to the ballot for a vote by the people, and its connections to actual prison labor in the state of Louisiana, right? There are so many people in the state of Louisiana that are Black that are incarcerated. In fact, Louisiana has the highest incarceration in the world, even ahead of China in terms of the amount of people that are incarcerated. And then furthermore, we have a very infamous facility here called Angola, where incarcerated people are picking cotton, they're raising geese, they are doing all types of hard labor and being paid pennies on the dollar. So back to the slavery exception clause. The slavery exception clause in our state constitution allows for this prison labor to go on without payment. And so this prison labor goes by another name that we know, and that's slavery. And so slavery is permissible via our state constitution as punishment for a crime. So when we think about the number of Black people that are incarcerated in the state of Louisiana and the level of intense labor that they are required to do without pay or very little pay, then we recognize how interested our prison industrial complex might be in keeping the exception clause in our state constitution. How interested these. Go ahead.
Well, let me ask you: Did you watch the video I sent you? My interview with Dr. Darrell Scott
Not
dealing
yet.
with the 13th. Oh, you need to watch that.
Okay, I'm gonna watch it.
Yeah, the 13th Amendment is based upon the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. People totally misunderstand all this stuff because that stuff existed going back to the 1840s before the 13th Amendment was even created. And the 13th, what they were doing with the 13th Amendment was really, they were giving the same rights to African Americans that white men had. Then the next year after 1865, you had the 1866 Civil Rights Act of 1866, which became the foundation of the 14th Amendment of 1868. So what I encourage people to do is in states where they have removed people, one of the things that happens is that well-meaning people confuse language in state constitutions with actual law. In states where they remove that clause, how many quote unquote slaves were freed the next day? How many were freed the next month because that clause was removed? How many? So people are totally misunderstanding this and thinking that's why that That's why they're incarcerated. No, it's not. Okay, you can't get to actually changing those laws because you think this over here is why they're incarcerated. No, and if you go look at even you look at the creation of the convict leasing system going back to the 1840s, and if I remember correctly, that started in Louisiana. We disproportionately made up the convict leasing system in the 1840s. Mm-hmm. Okay, so one of the mistakes. So this is what happened. Mm-hmm. When Ava DuVernay's documentary 13th came out, mm-hmm. I was doing a lecture and doing research on a lecture dealing with the history of the war on drugs in this country. History of the war on drugs goes back to June 17th, 1971, with Richard Nixon, when he declared his war on drugs in front of Congress, asking for more money to fight the war on drugs. Mm-hmm. So I kept coming back to this. Now, the U.S. prison population quadruples from 1970 to 1993. Okay. And once again, the crime bill wasn't the 94 crime bill that everybody likes to talk about. That wasn't signed into law to September 13th, 1994. U.S. prison population goes from 300,000 in 1970 to 1.3 million in 1993. People can go to the U.S. Bureau of Prisons, go to their website. You can look at, I went and researched the prison populations in this country. Okay. Mm-hmm. It quadruples from 1970 to 1993. Mm-hmm. So the question I kept coming back to is, because you have very low prison rates in this country up until the early 1970s. I kept coming back to this question. Okay, so if the 13th Amendment was created to re-enslave African Americans, why did it take 106 years from 1865 to 1971 for this quote unquote mass incarceration that everybody likes to talk about? And in talking to Dr. Darrell Scott, who taught a class at, he was a historian, history professor at Howard University. Now he's at Morgan State University. He taught a class on from slavery to mass incarceration. And he told me about how each year he has to dispel all these myths that these freshmen and sophomores come into the classes with, things like this. He has to deal with the real history, mm-hmm. And really understanding the laws that shape the history behind this. So I'll encourage people to go look at those states that remove what they call the slavery exception clause from their state constitutions, and then see what the impact was. Okay, and then because that's not why they're in prison. I'm telling you. And
I don't think that the advocate groups that are fighting mm-hmm. for the removal of the exception clause are even positing that is why. But I think it does beg the question of how these laws and these constitutional amendments almost justify what's happening. And I think it creates the space for a conversation, not only around hard labor, but you were talking about the war on drugs or the war on crime, mm-hmm. During the Nixon presidency, how, maybe a law does not directly contribute to a thing, may not directly contribute to folks being in jail, but it creates an environment where it is acceptable for there to be a war on drugs, for there to be, an over-policing of Black bodies and under-policing of Black communities. It creates an environment. And so I think it's still critical for us to your point, understand our state constitutions and the implications of them, and to continue to understand the intricate way we can influence these things. Because again, a constitutional amendment can be changed through the vote of a House and a Senate and a state legislature, and it can go to the ballot. And so I think and I see what you're saying, like the policy did not directly contribute, this amendment did not directly contribute to mass incarceration in Louisiana. But to my point, I think it is still important to continue the political education and the connections between these things.
Oh, absolutely.
And, I think also, too, about, some policies that have impacted around, like, you think about the war on drugs and marijuana, and how mm-hmm. a bag of marijuana has landed some people in the state of Louisiana in jail for 75 years for a dime bag of weed. And so, policies that have happened, again, on the local level, in places like Shreveport and New Orleans, where if you are pulled over and you have 14 grams or less of marijuana, you don't get taken to jail. You receive a ticket that you then pay later, right? And so policies do have an impact, and we have to understand the intricacies of those and be able to look at our issues and say, okay, this may, Brika Peoples, one of the activists that I work with here in Louisiana, she said she was sitting in court one day and, somebody got thrown in jail for a dime of weed. And that in her mind is what activated her to say, hey, we need to change policy around marijuana, because so many of our Black men are being put in jail because of this. While there are other harder drugs in other populations that are being slapped on the hand. And so these connections, the political education to make those connections for our people, having the conversation around these things is important. I think that there should be a U.S. Constitution study group. I think that we should be sitting down and looking at our state constitution, but I also think we need to be looking at our city charters.
Oh, absolutely. City charter is the city constitution.
Yes.
Yeah. City charter, state constitution, U.S. Constitution. Mm-hmm. So just quickly, and I'm gonna get back to the article in just a minute. When we talk about marijuana, up until 1937, marijuana was legal in this country. The use of marijuana was legal in this country. You know why marijuana was made illegal in 1937?
Propaganda.
What do you mean by propaganda?
The propaganda that was put out about the dangers of marijuana and the dangers of ingesting marijuana.
Okay. You ever heard of Harry J. Anslinger?
No.
Okay. Harry J. Anslinger is the main reason why marijuana is illegal. Harry J. Anslinger was a virulent racist. And he was the first chairman of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics. Okay. And he went on he had this campaign, and this is during the Great Depression. Okay. This is during the 1930s. And after the prohibition of alcohol, the Federal Bureau is looking for another cause to go after to keep the funding going. Okay. Now, this is a piece from timeline.com, now it's medium.com, how a racist hate monger masterminded America's war on drugs. Harry Anslinger conflated drug use, race, and music to criminalize non-whiteness and create a prison industrial complex. This is from February 28, 2018. This is Harry J. Anslinger. Okay. Now, this is even before the FBI was. I think this is before the FBI also. But here's what happened. It was along racial lines. Okay. Harry J. Anslinger, in his congressional testimony. Okay. And I'm gonna find this quote here. I want everybody to see this. Harry J. Anslinger, in his congressional testimony, said that it says here, from the beginning, Anslinger conflated drug use, race, and music. He said reefer makes darkies think they're as good as men, end quote. He was quoted as saying, quote, there are 100,000 total marijuana smokers in the U.S., and most are Negroes, Hispanics, Filipinos, and entertainers. Their satanic music, jazz and swing music, result from marijuana use. This marijuana causes white women to seek sexual relations with Negroes, entertainers, and any others, end quote. Now, this is the same guy who helped to bring down Billie Holiday and set Billie Holiday. When you watch the Billie Holiday movie that was on Hulu, it's Harry J. Anslinger that sets up Billie Holiday.
Now I gotta see that. Down. I gotta see that movie now.
Okay, so what I did was, in preparation for my lecture dealing with the Richard Nixon's war on drugs, I had to go back and study the history of drug policies in this country, going back to 1875 in San Francisco when you had the first drug laws in this country. And these were the anti-opium laws targeting Chinese men working on the railroads, because all these drugs were legal as long as white people were using them. Opium was legal, marijuana, or what was called cannabis or hemp, was legal. Cocaine was legal. Cocaine becomes illegal because white people fear that black men have superhuman strength when they're high on cocaine, and they fear that they'll rape white women. Okay, so there was a February 8th, 1914 article from the New York Times, 1914, because the New York Times is over 100 years old. Okay, and this is a famous article. I want everybody to check this out. Okay, this is a famous article titled "Negro Cocaine Fiends Are a New Southern Menace." Okay. Let me see. We could pull this up here. This is from, okay, I got a couple of sources on this. Okay, because I have a subscription to the New York Times. So let's look at this one right here, and then we'll continue. But it's important for people. This is how history and racism shapes policies. Okay. This is from the New York Times, February 8th, 1914. This is the same year that World War I starts. Negro cocaine fiends are a new Southern menace, murder and insanity increasing among lower class blacks because they have taken to sniffing since deprived of whiskey by prohibition. Now, this is a huge article from the New York Times. And one of the things that they're asking in this article is, do police officers now need to carry a 45 caliber handgun because a 38 is not powerful enough to kill a Negro high on cocaine? And the fear that these black men will rape white women. Okay, now, exactly 1 year to the date that this article came out, you know what movie came out?
No, what came out?
The Birth of a Nation, February 8th, 1915. Exactly 1 year to the date that this article came out. And in The Birth of a Nation,
propaganda,
there's a scene where you have this black man trying to rape a white virgin. And the heroes of the movie are the Ku Klux Klan, who rise up to put down what they call a rebellion of former Union Negro soldiers during the Reconstruction era. And the movie The Birth of a Nation is largely credited with the resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan in this country going into the 1920s. Because the movie showed the Klans as heroes, and is centered around the fear of what would these black men do? Oh, now they're free. Okay, because the movie takes place during slavery, the Civil War, and Reconstruction. And will they rape white women? Well, this is the fear that they talk about in that article from the New York Times. This is the fear surrounding the anti-opium laws of 1875 targeting Chinese men. Will they seduce white women? Will they rape white women? Things like this when they're high on opium. Okay, now, this and we're gonna wrap up here in just a minute. And I want you to talk about your other organization as well, ASAP. Okay. The piece from news1.com had so much in here, and it also talked about the disparity in the amount of money that was spent by Democrats in relationship to Republicans. Okay. $1.2 million spent in September and by Republicans, $28,000 in September by Democrats in this governor's race. Okay. Talk about that discrepancy for a minute, and what do you think African Americans especially can do to combat that in future elections?
Well, the discrepancy is very alarming. I would love to, hear from our party leadership to really understand that a little bit better, and kind of, what did the resource ask look like, and kind of what were the gaps? Was there a hesitance to invest, and just really learn more about that? But I also think what this speaks to in terms of like Black people is that if this is the party that we want to build our power in, we have to start running for office within the party. You know, again,
Okay. Yeah.
I always like the revolution is local, right? You got your state party,
Hmm.
but we also need to be running for our DPACs and our DSCCs. We need to.
Now explain that DPAC and DSCC. Explain that. Break down those
So the
acronyms.
DPAC is the district. So like you have your state representative district. The
Okay.
DPAC is over
Right.
that level, that I guess that district level in terms of the Democratic
Okay.
Party. They make up the members of the Democratic leadership in the state. And then you have the
Right.
DSCC, which is based on your state Senate district, right? And so you have
Okay.
individuals like me and you that can run for leadership in those groups, in those
Right.
committees. They are committees. They are Democratic committees. But you also have executive leadership, which is the leadership that is on the state level. So you have your various districts over certain levels. Like there's a district that will govern Shreveport, and there's many parishes that are within that DPEC district, and there are even more parishes that are within the DSCC district. And then you have your executive leadership, who work closely with the chairman and the executive director of the party. And so you can run for those positions as well as members of the party. And so it's important that we not only talk about running for office in the context of running for all the many offices that show up on a public ballot, but for offices
Right.
within the party, with the caveat that I do not believe the Republican or the Democratic Party is going to save us. I don't believe that,
Correct.
you know, one party is going to be able to address the gamut, the comprehensive, pervasive level of the issues that we as Black people experience. But I think it is important to learn how to leverage the political system. And so the DPECs and the DSCCs, they exist. The Executive Council of the Democratic Party exists. Run for office and be able to influence, to bring in resources. If we only spend $28,000, what leadership role can you play to bring more resources in? But, you know, so that's from the partisan perspective. But also there
Right.
is the conversation that we need to run for office. We need to vet
Right.
people to run for office. We got brilliant Gen Z and millennials that are out here that are doing wonderful work outside of the political apparatus, that have the talent, that have the skill set. They just need the support, the ask to run for office. Devontae Lewis is an example of a young, brilliant person who leveraged their skill set and ran for office, and now is the youngest public service commissioner in the state of Louisiana. Running for office is scary. So while I'm saying to run
Right.
for office, I also have to be able to support somebody to run for office. That means donate to
Exactly.
the campaign, canvas for the campaign,
Right.
phone bank for the campaign. And we need to be thinking about this right now, because in 4 years, guess what? We're going to have another governor's race, and we're going to be facing the same situation. And so we want to be ahead of that situation by, let's vet our next governor. Let's vet our next lieutenant governor. Let's vet our next state senators. Let's vet our next House representatives. Let's vet our next Congress people. Let's vet and let's educate and let's support. So that's that part of the
Exactly.
question. You asked me something else.
It was okay, so we can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. So that's important. The other thing I would say is this is one of the reasons why it's important to support African American owned businesses,
Mm-hmm.
because you'll have white businesses that donate to campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but our businesses are underfunded,
Mm-hmm.
and only about 3% of our disposable income is spent with African American owned businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Also,
Mm-hmm.
so they're handicapped, many of them, in how much they can support political campaigns that
Mm-hmm.
will benefit their employees if they have any. 95% of our businesses don't have any employees,
Mm-hmm.
but will benefit the owners, benefit their families, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so all of this is connected. We have to leverage our economics to enforce our political agenda.
Yeah.
All right, I talk about this. One of my teachers, Dr. Claude Anderson, deals with this as well.
And Dr. Booker
I
T.
proceed-
Washington was big on that as well, to undergird our
Mhm.
economic base in order to then build the political power. So I'm a huge fan of that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, and the way it is now, we got to do all this simultaneously. Okay,
Oh my goodness.
basically,
Tell me.
we have to do all of it simultaneously the way things are now. Okay, there was Cliff Albright co-founder of Black Voters Matter, was quoted in this article from news1.com. Then I want to go to this quote. Cliff Albright was on Roland Martin Unfiltered here in the past few weeks as well. So let me go to this piece here. Cliff Albright, co-founder of Black Voters Matter, suggested ahead of Saturday's Saturday, October 14th election that the Louisiana Democratic Party inadequately invested in Black voters. Inadequately invested in Black voters. He said, quote, "There's really no discussion and no important and more important, there's really no discussion and more importantly, very little lack of investment in voter mobilization." He said this to thehill.com. Quote, "That includes the party itself not putting a lot into this election, which unfortunately is a pattern that we're seeing in southern states in general, and particularly in states that have Black candidates." Okay, you want to comment on that?
Clearly, this past election was a case study in exactly that.
Yes, yeah, and there's a sentiment amongst state Democratic parties in the South, especially that you can't win in the South. You can't win statewide elections in the South, things like this. So why try? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, because look at Governor John Bel Edwards.
Yes.
He was a white candidate, though, right? And so did that have to do with his success? Because as you said, 91, 97, like upper 90% of the Black vote that he got in comparison to the 71% that Dr. Shawn Wilson, Black candidate, got for the vote. Right. And so, like, that's a real conversation. And we really need all of our great minds on that, because I think, again, we have like enough untapped power in the state and enough progressive support from our white allies who we have to tap in as well to win elections.
Right. I agree with that. This article goes on to say critics on social media also suggest that Louisiana's Democratic Party should be scapegoated more than Black voters. Dr. Sierra Jackson, who's a scientist, posted on social media, quote, these takes where folks are blaming Black voters in Louisiana are becoming real anti-Black. Louisiana usually has a jungle primary. Landry, State's Attorney General Jeff Landry, received more than 50% of the votes. This usually does not happen. Democrats put in minimal outreach effort with no solidified front runner. I think there were more than a dozen people who were running on the. How many were running on the Democratic side? Was it more than a dozen?
No. On the Democratic side, there were only like 3 or 4 Democratic candidates. 3 or 4. But there were on the ticket like 12, like 14 people that were running, mostly Republicans, and there was an independent ran as well.
Right. Okay. Now, Dr. Sierra Jackson also said that she was in New Orleans, Louisiana, and quote, could not really tell you there was an election about to happen until my brother said he early voted, end quote. Dr. Sierra Jackson went on to say, stop blaming folks that you continue to not engage, end quote. So everybody check out the rest of this article here by Bruce C.T. Wright for news1.com. Black voters scapegoated for Louisiana, electing suspected white supremacist Jeff Landry as governor. So it's a fascinating article, gives a lot of background information. They also cite this link in the article where they talk about Jeff Landry's history of anti-Black policies. They cite this article here from boltmag.org, BOLT. Jeff Landry's bid for Louisiana governor has been a crusade against its cities. As Attorney General, Landry has relentlessly targeted New Orleans and other largely Black cities and shielded its police from reforms. Now he's bringing that message to his campaign. This is from August 31st, 2023 by Piper French. And just quickly here, just to give you one example, it says, since he took office in January 2016, Landry has waged a rhetorical war on crime in New Orleans, filled with racist dog whistles, implying that the majority Black city is lawless and out of control. Quote, he definitely appeals to race, said Bruce Riley, the deputy director of Voice of the Experienced, or VOTE, a group of formerly incarcerated Louisianans and their allies that advocates for criminal legal reform. Quote, you pile on the Black mayor, the Black DA, the Black sheriff, right? It's known as a Black city, end quote. So you can go ahead and comment on this, and then I want you to tell us about ASAP, the other organization.
That's absolutely true. He's has a history, a track record of targeting or wanting to target Black cities, Black advocates. Again, I have a very good comrade in Brika Peoples who was arrested for marching Black men to the polls during Jeff Landry's tenure as Attorney General. And so this is very real. He wants to reveal the arrest records of juveniles, but only in specific cities, Shreveport, Baton Rouge, and New Orleans, right? And so he is not hiding. It's very obvious with what he is doing. Again, going back to the revolution is local. Your DA is on the local level. Your mayor is on the local level. Your council person is on the local level. And we have to start getting real. Local areas are Black cities where we have, as Bruce was saying, our Black sheriffs, our Black DAs, and our Black mayors. We have to get real about how is our Blackness serving our community? How we Black. But are we passing any Black legislation? Are we helping any Black people? You know, we have to get real about that. What legislation do we need to put on the table to protect our people? Protect our people from poverty, protect our people from the weather, the crazy Louisiana weather, protect our people from arrest, protect our people from death and sickness, from violence. What are we putting on the table locally to really leverage and flex our power? Those are the questions we are trying to have, because, and honestly, it's late, but it's not too late. Right. You know, it's not 12 a.m. It's 3 a.m., which was a question that was asked at a conference. Is it 12 a.m. dark or is it 3 a.m. dark for the Black movement in America? And I believe it is 3 a.m. Because there are so many tools and resources at our disposal and so much information at our disposal, but we have to connect it in a strategic way to build, leverage our local power, to engage people in our local communities, to go where people don't usually go. And that's why I believe organizations like Black Voters Matter is important, as well as ASAP, all streets, all people, ASAP, right? We need all streets. We need to be going into all neighborhoods, into all geographic areas, and having real conversations with people about what is at stake. Because when you talk to a person on a commercial, or you try to talk to a person through a live or through a sign, that ain't cutting it. We have to have real one-on-one conversations. And ASAP helps to create a sense of urgency around these systems and these structures that take a long time to change. We're not going to be able to change our criminal justice system, which incarcerates more Black people than anywhere else in the world, in one night. It takes time, but we need everybody engaged in whatever level and whatever role you have the capacity to serve. And we need it to be done with a sense of urgency. It wasn't done yesterday. It can't be finished tomorrow, but we have to work at it every single day. But we also have to recognize what are the root causes to the symptoms that we're dealing with today. And, you know, when it comes down to it, we got an inequity in education. Look at this whole fight around inaccurate retelling of our history and accurate teaching that governors are fighting all across this country around the woke agenda. And so there are clear problems, there are clear issues, but I think that when we all tap into our core competency and our core capacity, even for our people who work full time doing something else, there is a role for you to play in this movement work. So whether it's our education fight, whether it's our nonviolence or our gun violence fight, whether it's our mass incarceration fight, whether it's our food or Black farmer fight, whether it's our housing justice fight, whether it's our electoral and voting fight. All Black people need to be doing something when it comes to our liberation. And it might just be posting something one day and making phone calls another. It might just be wearing a shirt when you go into certain spaces or attending a city council meeting. But we got to have all hands on deck. And I'm not just talking about in Shreveport or Louisiana. I'm talking about all streets, all people, ASAP. So.
Exactly. Now, what is the website of ASAP? How can people get more information? How can people financially support ASAP also?
So, I do want to lift up, there are 3 really important projects we're working on. Like, this is why I love you, Dr. Imhotep, because our Ella Jo Baker Movement School focuses on delivering a political and popular education to everyday people so that we can have the tools. Anybody who knows Ella Baker knows that she said, strong people don't need strong leaders. And so that philosophy undergirds the movement school. We got a motivator for our new folk. We got a study for our intermediate folks who wants to delve deeper into movements of the past. And we got our lab for our people who want to take their community concerns and build an actual campaign. And so we are accepting donations if you want to support that work. If you want to be a part of it, sign up for it. It's free. Visit us on Facebook. All Streets, All People, ASAP will pop up. You can check out our website at asapworldwide.org. And just stay engaged. Like my dream, my vision is to make our digital spaces a movement school. So when you log on, you can get some level of political education when we're in these spaces, because we're spending so much time on the internet. We might as well be getting something out of it, even if it's just 10, 15, 20 minutes a day. So that's what's ASAP.
Now, give us the website again.
It's All Streets, All People ASAP on Facebook. It is asapworldwide.org on the World Wide Web. And then
asapworldwide.org.
Yep.
Okay.
Visit us there. And we also got our boots on the ground. And anybody can have a boots on the ground. And it's basically taking a molecular focus to community change. It's a team of everyday people that go out and knock on doors and have conversations with people and document those conversations, organize those people, as many people as we can from the neighborhood level with our neighborhood associations, to be able to build campaigns and to be able to learn how to address whatever those issues are in their community. So that's boots on the ground.
Okay, excellent. Visit that website for ASAP, asapworldwide.org. We have the link here. And then on Facebook, All Streets, All People on Facebook. Lastly, people can check out this article here. I mentioned this on Roland Martin Unfiltered. We don't have time to get into it here, but this deals with the Louisiana State Constitution. I teach this in my Sunday class, dealing with Black resistance movements from Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, Black Power Movement, 1800 to 1968. This deals with Louisiana officially disenfranchises Black voters and jurors. This was May 12, 1898. This dealt with the the adoption of the Louisiana State Constitution. And they also instituted the non-unanimous felony conviction as well. Okay, so check this out at EJI.org, Equal Justice Initiative. Louisiana officially disenfranchises Black voters and jurors.
Dr. Imhotep, are you dropping all of these links in the chat? So like afterwards, I could just like
I could post them here. Yes, some of them here. Yeah, I'll post this one here in this chat as well. And I don't have a doctorate.
Well, but I'm sorry, but you're dropping gems.
It's all right. It's all right. It's all right. I just want people to know. Okay. Then the Associated Press article that I also referenced in the opening of the show. Republican Jeff Landry wins the Louisiana governor's race, reclaims office for GOP. This is from the Associated Press, October 15, 2023 by Sarah Klein. And then in going into one of my early questions in this discussion, when I was asking you when people say, what do we get for our
Mhm.
vote and things like this, were they talking about specifically locally, or were they talking about voting at the national level, president, U.S. House of Representatives, things like this? What were they speaking of specifically?
In general, how is voting changed? You know, how has voting impacted their life in any way? And then I think also there is a sentiment in the community around the fact, the
Mhm.
feeling that presidential elections, they already have the candidate chosen, right? Like, you know, I would just, them people already know who's gonna win. There's that sense that we really don't have any real say or any real control over who's elected president. But I think that same sentiment goes on the local level too, that whoever we vote for, we may have the power to elect someone, but whoever is elected hasn't done anything that has impacted my life in a positive way. There's also that feeling as well. So I think it runs the gamut from the top of the ticket to the bottom of the ticket.
Yeah, well, oftentimes when things happen positively, they don't know why they happen.
And so that's why we got to make, just like you were talking about, Anslinger, Harry J. Anslinger, right? And the messaging and the imagery, right, that scared people into thinking that marijuana was going to separate white men from their white women, and all the black men were going. I mean, it was the messaging, it was the images, and I think that we have to be able to engage our own counteroffensive, our own counter campaign around the reality of what's actually happening, the reality of if you got those extra checks or whatever, this is what actually happened, right? And that has to
Congress passed that. Congress, that wasn't.
That has to be a bigger message, because you got Sexy Red out here saying one thing, and a lot of people are listening only to Sexy Red. And I'm not saying that we're unsophisticated in terms, but if the information is out there, the people are going to be out there to receive it. So we also, on our end, from our side of things, have to also be flooding with information and creating opportunities for people to come in and see how the process works. I think that's, we can't carry the burdens of the world on our shoulders, but we also have to play the role that we have to play in terms of educating our people about how the sausage is made.
So being that you mentioned Sexy Red, I saw the podcast interview that she did. And for those that don't know, Sexy Red is an up-and-coming rapper who calls herself the Raw Dog Queen.
Oh, my God. I didn't even know that. I didn't need to.
Oh, people need to Google Sexy Red. Oh, yes. But in a recent podcast interview, she said that Donald Trump freed Black people from prison, and he gave out stimulus checks. And she said we need Donald Trump back in office. Now, she skipped over the January 6th election. She skipped over Donald Trump trying to overturn the election results of the votes of 16.9 million African Americans. She skipped over Donald Trump, his two attorney generals stopping the investigations and patterns and practices into police departments. She skipped over the fact that his first attorney general, Jeff Sessions, who was a former U.S. senator from Alabama, who helped to block the criminal justice reform that Democrats were trying to get passed under President Barack Obama. When Jeff Sessions became Trump's first attorney general, Jeff Sessions backed off on investigating police departments with the patterns and practices investigations, and the patterns and practices investigations that Attorney General Merrick Garland has started back up. The reason why the Department of Justice has that authority to do that is because of the 1994 crime bill. That's where that comes from, just so people know. But the stimulus checks, the ability to tax and spend belongs to Congress, not the president. Trump signed off on those care package, the CARES packages, the two coronavirus packages, but it was Democrats that increased the amount of stimulus checks that he signed off on, and he put his name on those checks. But under President Joe Biden, there was $1,400, and that came from the American Rescue Plan, and no Republicans in the House or the Senate voted for that bill, and Vice President Kamala Harris had the tie-breaking vote in the Senate so that you got those checks. So Sexy ain't mentioned that.
Yeah, she's not going to mention it because that doesn't fit into whoever sent her That's my personal conspiracy.
Well, she doesn't study
Yeah, I
politics.
mean,
She doesn't study politics. She
and
doesn't
that's
know
not
that.
her job as an artist to really, but also like we have to educate them too. Like there, it's just,
Absolutely.
There's so much that needs to be done. But what I will say is, what you just said got to be broken down into like 20 to 30 second or 1 minute clips and flooded out there. And you know, people of influence saying the same thing, because those are the facts. And unless we're vigilant about using the tools at our disposal to get the facts out there, the misinformation will prevail and it will become common knowledge. Because I can't tell you enough right now how Instagram and places like TikTok and other places, a lot of us and a lot of people in my age group, I'm 33 years old, talking about they want to vote for Trump. And the talking points that they're utilizing that, right? And so there has got to be a massive
so this is what I do.
This is overhaul of education. Okay, I'm done.
Well, we've been miseducated, and like this goes back to my point. A lot of us are playing the real game of political football and don't know the difference between a first down and a touchdown. So one of the reasons why I'm a political commentator is because I do the research. I'm not just a historian, not just former teacher of entrepreneurship and managed Black-owned companies that had government contracts. But proper documentation ends all conversation. So one of the things that I do is to provide the evidence that this is, now I'm the only person that I know of that has dealt with this, and I deal with this on a consistent basis. This is at whitehouse.gov. Whitehouse.gov is the official website of the White House. And this is a fact sheet. The Biden-Harris administration advances equity and opportunity for Black Americans and communities across the country. This is last time I checked, is about 36 pages. It goes through and breaks down the policies from the Biden-Harris administration and how they are helping the African-American community. Now, some people may say, oh, well, they talk about minority in here. Well, based upon Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, Section 601, non-discrimination in federally assisted programs, race-based policies are illegal, which means you can't have policies for only one race of people. So people want policies specifically for African Americans. That means you don't understand law. That means you haven't done the proper research.
And a lot of us don't understand law. I mean,
exactly. That's why I'm breaking this down. That's why I mentioned this on Roland's show. I tell people, go read this, because if you read this, then you understand how the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan that no Republicans in the House or the Senate voted for. And the only reason why you got it is because Vice President Kamala Harris was a tie-breaking vote in the House, in the U.S. Senate. Okay. And it talks about how 1 million Black children were lifted out of poverty because of the earned child tax credit. It talks about the stimulus checks. It talks about the money that went to HBCUs. It talks about how in 2021, $5.8 billion went to HBCUs from the Biden-Harris administration, which is a record amount of money. It talks about jobs created, okay, as well. And a few months ago, we had the lowest unemployment rate in history for African Americans, even though it may fluctuate from month to month. Okay, this goes through and breaks all that down. It talks about how the infrastructure bill is going to help start repairing African-American communities that were separated and disrupted because of the U.S. Interstate Highway Acts in 1952 and 56 that drove 41,000 miles of U.S. interstate highways all across the country, and they ran through 1,600 African-American communities, like the Black Bottom community that I live near here in Detroit, where I-375 ran through. Okay, so this goes through and makes the connection between policy and impact. Policy, impact. Okay. So we'll post this link here as well. This is at whitehouse.gov. We'll put this link on our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com as well. The last time this was updated was February 27th, 2023. The first time it came out was October of 2021. So they updated it like twice a year or so. And I hear people say, oh, well, Asians got a hate crime bill. Okay, if you actually go to congress.gov and read the bill, because I read the bill, the name of the bill is the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act. It's not the Asian Hate Crimes Act. It's the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act, because when you read the bill, it deals with COVID-19 related hate crimes. And if you actually read the bill, it applies to people of all races, including African Americans. But people skip over the Emmett Till anti-lynching bill. I don't know how people do that. They talk about a bill that ain't named after Asians, but skip over the Emmett Till anti-lynching bill, which is named after a Black boy. I don't understand how they do a magic trick like that. But go ahead, sister. Go ahead and wrap up.
All I will say is there are plenty of opportunities for us to build a new movement. And there are plenty of people like you and me who are willing and committed to do the work, that have our various talents, that have our various skills, that have our various interests. Again, there are a lot of issues in our community. But, you know, the reason why we started the movement school is because we knew that there was a gap in education, that there is a civic education gap, that there is a gap in understanding how government works. There is a gap in understanding our power. There is a gap in making sure that we understand the interconnections between what we're feeling in our pocketbook, what we're seeing in our homes, what we're smelling in the air, and decisions that people are making, right? And so we just have to really tap into what role are we willing to play in this movement, because these next couple of years are going to be crucial. And then for my Louisiana people, I definitely want us to keep hope alive, because again, November 18th, we got Attorney General, State Treasurer, as well as Secretary of State, and many other races, runoff races for the House and the Senate on the ballot, and other municipal races. So we still have to get out to vote, and we still got to bring our people with us. But to all my black people, we're going to have to really tap in to what role we are playing in this Black freedom movement and in the Black resistance. As me and my comrade Katura have been lifting up, we got a whole Black resistance movement happening here in Louisiana. And I think that is what we're going to have to really mount these next couple of years, because I got a vision beyond all this political fighting and all this social justice, where I want to go and get me some land and grow me some food and build me some tiny homes, right? But we have to mount our resistance. We got to push back against what they're doing in the courts. We got to push back against what they're doing at the polls. We got to push back against what they're doing in our legislatures, in our classrooms, in our neighborhoods, in these police departments, and these jails, and these prisons, in these grocery stores. We got to push back right now. And everybody has to play a role in the pushback, while also envision what it is that we want to see for our lives in terms of joy and happiness and radical rest. Like, what do we ultimately want for our communities? And I know we don't envision fighting forever. So there has to be both a resistance, and then there has to be a liberation vision. And I encourage everyone to tap into that, whatever that look like.
Right. Well, what's the website for Black Voters
Black
Matter?
Voters Matter Fund, FUND.org. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you're in the Louisiana area, Black Voters Matter Louisiana, if you would like to become a partner of Black Voters Matter.
All right. Excellent. Well, look, Omari, it's been great having you on. We had to have you back. And then I'll definitely speak to your Freedom School. That's the Ella Jo Baker Freedom School. Movement School. Okay. And for, Movement School, right? And for those that don't know, so Ella Baker was a co-founder of Southern Christian Leadership Conference in 1957, along with Dr. King. And she also helped to organize SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, in April, right around April of 1960 as well. So she is really an unsung hero, I would say, of the civil rights movement. Probably because she was a woman. And you know, a lot of people, now what I say may go outside the circumference of some people's awareness, but John Lewis said it best. He said the civil rights movement was led by a lot of Black male Protestant ministers, and most of them were sexist. Okay. And Dr. King was a sexist also. Those that study Dr. King know this. And Ella Baker leaves Southern Christian Leadership Conference after she's passed over for a permanent leadership position, because Dr. King and other men in the organization did not think that women belonged in permanent leadership positions. So she leaves SCLC that she helped to co-found. So it's a deep, I mean, we can go back to, you know, the Niagara movement, 1905, and William Monroe Trotter, who was a brilliant brother, But really, William Monroe Trotter was a sexist. He didn't think that women belonged in these organizations.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that Ida B. Wells agreed with them too much.
Yeah,
on that
and
as
you
well.
know, Ella Jo Baker, she pushed back on King. She pushed back on civil rights leadership, and her whole thing was, we don't need to just depend on a charismatic leader. We need to depend on ourselves, and that's ultimately why we founded this movement school in her namesake, because we got to empower everybody, not just our charismatic leaders or our great orators who serve a role, but they're not the only type of leaders that we need.
Right. Okay, well, everybody, we've been speaking with Omari Hosang, Black Voters Matter and Black Voters Matter Fund, and founder, executive director of All Streets, All People ASAP. She's in Louisiana, so check her out. All right, Omari, you have a great night.
Thank you so much for having me. It was very fun.
Thanks for coming up.
Peace.
No problem. Peace. All right, everybody. I'm Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. If you learned anything today, be sure to support the African History Network as well. You can support us, $ the AHN show, through Cash App, through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. Also visit our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. Register for the online history classes that I teach, that I mentioned briefly a few minutes ago. I'm a historian. I'm not just a political commentator. Some of you all see me on Roland Martin Unfiltered on Fridays. This month is my third year anniversary, I should say, being on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Visit our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. Scroll down. We have information about my Sunday night show, the African History Network show. But the online classes that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. And our next class is going to be, it's actually going to be Sunday, October 29th, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Our next class. Normally we do this Saturdays, but this class we're going to do on Sunday. We do thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. Okay, so we had a great class this past Sunday. We did a class Sunday, October 22nd, and I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles, video clips, and we take you all throughout history. It's about 80 articles every reference. There's 15 books. We show you excerpts of the book on the screen. I created the PowerPoint presentation. We have about 200 slides in the PowerPoint presentation. Then my Sunday class, Black Resistance Movements from the Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, Black Power Movement, 1800 to 1968. Okay. And that class picks up where the other one, the first class, leaves off. All right. So we did a free class session on Saturday, October 22nd. So if you missed that, visit our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. You can register for that free class session and you can watch it. It's archived. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. And you can join us in class on Sunday, October 29th. Okay. All right. We have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. And we'll talk to you next time. Peace.
Is your child struggling with reading, writing, learning loss, and a culturally irrelevant curriculum? Do you want your child to be outstanding at reading and writing and also take pride in their culture? Then you want Reading Revolution Online. Reading Revolution Online is a web-based reading support program. We serve scholars in grades K through 8, and through our innovative approach, we help them build reading confidence and cultural identity development, equipping them for success